Welcome to Paul Lawson Chats, a podcast for helpers. In each episode, we'll hear stories from folks from various companies and organizations who are making a real difference by bringing positive change and infusing radical good into their workplaces, communities, and world. Hey all, it's Paul. Today, I've got my incredible friend, Asma Bayunus, who is the Environmental Health and Safety Operations Manager at Jordan Foster Construction in Austin, Texas. Asma, how are you today?
I am doing great, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I was actually just down in your neck of the woods just 2 weeks ago now? I was down there.
Yes, it was 2 weeks on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it was a little bit more than 2 weeks. But yes,
my
2
first
weeks,
time, hanging out down in Texas, and we were down there for the Working Mind Summit, the 4th annual Working Mind Summit.
Exactly.
Which is where, that summit is where you and I met 4 years ago now.
And that was in Colorado, right? That was in Denver.
That was in Denver, Colorado.
And
we were there to go get certified in Vital Cog, suicide prevention in the workplace training. And we were at the same table.
Yes, we were. And I was there, and I still remember when you walked in. You walked in towards the end of kind of just hanging out before we officially started. And I remember you walking over to my table, and I don't know, it was Sally, I think, who introduced us and said, "Hey,
yes,
this is Paul."
Yes. And I was like, "Hi." And I was so new. I was new to construction, so I already felt like a baby in all ways, shapes, and forms with all of this stuff. So I'm walking into this construction summit for mental health stuff, which was new. And I felt like a fish out of water. And then you guys we all became friends. A lot of the folks, I'd say half of that table now?
Yes.
We're still friends,
are incredible people. They're incredible people.
To me, taking myself out of all of that, I know you and your story. I know, but I think other people need to hear the work that you've done over at Jordan Foster. I think people have heard me till I'm blue in the face up here in Ohio around mental health and construction here in the Midwest.
Yes.
But what you've done down in Texas, closer to the border, you guys have different challenges. And what I want to do is we're going to go through some questions, and I want to ask I want to get your story of you as a helper and how you have found yourself in this place of advocacy and how it has really come in and become a huge central part of your life. So
Absolutely.
Let's start there. What is your background and how did it end up with you at Jordan Foster and doing everything that you're doing?
I guess to start off, I will say that how did I get to Jordan Foster? That's such a deep and long. This is going to be a deep conversation you hit me with, Paul. Okay, so quite honestly, I never started off thinking that I would be working in the construction industry. Mm-hmm. For me, I migrated to the United States when I was 13 years old, and with a short stay in Atlanta, I ended up in Minnesota. And you have to understand, I moved from the Middle East to Atlanta, which was great. It was August. The heat was still there. Yep. And then I arrived to Minnesota on January 1st, 1990. And
Covered in snow.
And it was like this huge tundra, right? It was all white. And I'll tell you, I fell in love with the people there. And that was something that I grew up with. Minnesota Nice is a deep-rooted culture. It's where everyone looks after themselves and everybody, always makes sure, to check in on their neighbors. All we had was a shovel. And when we had that 6 feet of snow that one year, there was this one year, it was terrible. Everyone was snowed in. We were all over the news. The neighbors were coming out with their snow blowers and they were helping us and teaching us. And that was just kind of the culture in the small town of Cottage Grove, Minnesota, that I grew up in. That was extremely important. And then I'll tell you, the family I grew up in. My father, he was a huge influence in my life and set the tone. He was the captain of our ship. in our household. And, you know, my parents were very deeply rooted in community service and making sure that people were well taken care of, and they were extremely active in the mosque that we used to go to, and that I grew up attending. So taking care of your neighbor, taking care of each other, you know, not just living a very solitary life. You know, we were very involved in public, in public help, and especially to people who were immigrants, especially to people that were needing help when it came to women who went through divorces, or if there was food scarcity or anything like that. There was always something that we were involved in, especially also when it came to mental health. I remember my parents helping somebody who was going through a very difficult time in their life. And it just seemed that my parents were magnets for people who needed empathy and needed support. And that was a great visual, as well as a great onboarding into understanding how people can make a difference even on the smallest scale. Now, you know, as you're growing up and life happens, this August I will be married for 24 years, and that will be awesome. Thank you. And that will be the anniversary of when I moved to Texas, the great Republic of Texas. And so I have been here in Austin for about 24 years now. And I will tell you, I love Minnesota. I love it. However, Texas is my home. There is also a great sense of community and a great sense of taking care of each other. You know, as much as we are a little different, you know, every state has their personality and has
Texas has a lot of personality.
Yes, we do. And the great news is that when you are here, you know, we all consider ourselves a family. We will look out for each other regardless of how things are. And I know, like, the news cycles paint certain regions and certain areas as certain things, but when you live here, you do realize the beauty of the great state of Texas. Yeah. And it was through that, I'll be honest, I was a wife for a very long time, and still am. And then when I had my son, I was very happy, you know, being a homemaker. But after a certain amount of time, I'll be honest with you, it was very serendipitous. A friend of mine needed someone to help her at her office. It was a construction development company. And that was about 11 to 12 years ago. 11 to 12 years ago, I started off as an office manager. That was the first
little foray into the construction industry. Was 11 or 12 years ago?
11 or 12 years ago, exactly. Okay. And I'll tell you, it was basic administration. It was just taking care of the office, which is something that I love doing. I'll tell you, my nickname is the office mom, you know, because all I did was I took care of, you know, the background, so everyone else could go out and take care of the foreground. Yeah. So again, it was a role of taking care of. It wasn't exactly mental health, but it was providing it at the time, because we just didn't realize that when you create structure and stability for the people that you're working with, they are able to go out and perform at their highest possible level, right? So that was very important. And so, go ahead.
If you think about it, but if you think about that, then, that's like laid the groundwork. Like, even when you're coming at it from a support role and you're doing the stuff, like, it's a lot of the tasks and things that are the thankless, you know, you're doing the stuff that no one else wants to do, but you're doing it so that, like, other folks are supported. What a laying a groundwork of just, like, serving folks and helping folks that then became a ramp into the work that you're doing now, you know?
Exactly.
So it sounds like a humble, and I came at it from construction too, in the same, like, answering phones at a front desk, you know? Yeah. Working from, you know my story, but coming from church background and ministry and preaching and all that stuff to career change, whoa. Exactly. And then serving people up at just the front desk and just kind of learning the ropes of the industry and learning the verbiage and all of that. So that's interesting, similar kind of introductions into the construction industry. And then we ended up also in similar places now doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yes. And so the big thing after that, I'll be honest with you, the company was kind of changing directions. I was there for about 2 years and the company was changing directions. And, you know, I had a great boss, and he let me know that, hey, the company's changing a little bit of direction. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to move on too, you know, to find other opportunities. And I just happened to answer an advertisement where they needed an administrative assistant. I interviewed. I got the job a few hours later.
Wow.
Okay. And I came in and I sat down, and all I did was I loved taking care of the department that I was a part of.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was an administrative assistant here at Jordan Foster Construction. That was my first title here. Overall, it was one of the best positions because it allowed me to understand every internal avenue and framework for this organization.
Yeah.
And then as culture was moving forward and evolving, at the time, there were some management changes. And in those changes, I currently have the people that have invested in me the most. So the one thing I want to emphasize is that I always loved taking care of people. I've always loved being involved in helping people.
Yep.
There is a value system to helping others in a very selfish way actually helps you, you know, and it's not to say that I would sit down and have the conversation that, oh, I'm amazing because I helped all these people at work today. Actually, there wasn't much, there wasn't much verbal announcement, to what I did. It wasn't like I was sitting there telling everybody, I have a team of 8 to 12 people and look at how I keep them going.
Yeah.
But for me on the inside, there was a tremendous sense of responsibility that I had to a strong group of people. I mean, working for the safety department here at Jordan Foster safety is a little different than all the other places. And so my safety managers and my coordinators and the director and the executive vice president, all of these people have roles that are literally based on keeping the industry and the project safe. So we're saving lives. It was through all of these conversations and all the desire to help the department that Trisha Kager, who has been involved actually in the mental health movement, along with Sally and Cal, since the beginning. So I think everyone who's familiar enough with mental health, the mental health concept in construction knows the stigma that it still continues to this day. But 20 years ago, it was even more difficult to even think about, right? Like
a few years ago, I mean, even just the recording that I just did last week, just talking about like, this was weird to talk about 5 years ago,
Exactly.
Even with the folks who were paving the way, like with Sally Spencer Thomas, Cal Beyer, and them really helping kind of get the direction going. Like they're the ones who put the address in the GPS,
Yes.
And now we are on that track now, but it's only been a few years. I just think about the number of folks who were first engaged with Trisha getting involved with Sally and Cal a long time ago. So really, Jordan Foster has been part of the very first push of this movement, know,
absolutely,
which I think is incredible. And that's another perspective that you bring with Jordan Foster. That's really cool about like you're kind of part of the history of this thing.
Jordan Foster has had situations which led up to us wanting to talk about mental health awareness and bring it in way before my time. And I can't exactly remember the timeline. There was a situation where a certain incident had happened and someone had been directly affected to the point where they realized that this is an issue and that we do need to have a conversation, especially when it comes to the people that we employ. And not only for talking about it in industry, Jordan Foster got it past her. Jordan Foster got it past her because at the time, the services weren't as readily available. The easiest thing to do was to get somebody which people would feel comfortable enough into talking
So
to.
basically a chaplain.
Something like that. It's non-denominational. So for we, his name is Pastor Lopez. So that's why I always told we got a pastor. His name is Pastor Lopez, and he's still employed by Jordan.
I was going to say, does he still work with you guys?
He still does, and predominantly he's based out of El Paso. And he'll randomly show up at job sites, and he'll randomly, if he knows anything that's happened, he'll do his best to show up and have conversations and make sure people are okay. But at the same time, Jordan Foster also understood that faith-based conversations are one thing, but also having a structured and organized conversation and a setup where people who may not want to take the faith-based avenue, it's just important. It's an evolving concept. So because of it, when I got involved was when Sally was starting the Construction Working Minds Conference. And because Sally and Trisha were so well connected, they had been working on this together for so many years. This was something that Trisha and Damien entrusted me with. And I'll tell you, it has absolutely changed my life.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible that, like, when we sat there at that table 4 years ago, that was the very start of it. When we talk about this movement, and when we are speaking to other helpers and other folks who are either joining the movement or part of another movement in another industry, having community within the movement is so important. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've found, is that having friends who are doing this work. That was another one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, was because I want to highlight the value of community amongst people who are doing this work, knowing that maybe we have another black and white title where we're, that's making the bulk of our paycheck, but part of our work is being a helper, being an advocate. And I think it's important for us to be able to kind of band together with that, tell stories, lean on each other, encourage each other. I don't think I would be doing a lot of the stuff that I'm doing right now if it wasn't for, like, being friends with you for the past 4 years.
Oh, you're giving me way too much credit here, Paul. You are incredible.
But like, a lot of the steps that I've taken has happened because of encouragement from my other friends who are doing this work as well. So to me, it's so important, the value of community. Okay, you guys have built an incredible program over at Jordan Foster, enough so that it was just recognized with the Mid-Level Contractor Award over at the Working Minds Summit, which was, you are so deserving of that award, 100%, as well as Jordan Foster is, with the work that you guys have done. So what have you, what does your guys' program look like? And this is also going to tap into another question about how have you guys addressed some of the unique challenges of being a general contractor in a southern state that may look different than what contractors up here are dealing with. I'm friends with a bunch of folks here in Columbus and throughout Ohio, but I know that you guys have unique challenges down there. So what is your program? How did you build it? That eventually led to an award because of how incredible it is. And then what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced?
Okay, so I know I touched upon, create enough bite-sized pieces so people are able and willing to take a bite. And that was a very slow and steady thing. So as soon as I finished attending our very first Vital Cog, I basically touched a bit on it. The great thing is we have in industry been able to identify Mental Health Awareness Month, Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. The great thing is that we have the fall protection programs in May, the big stand downs that we do in industry. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of touching on things that we were already planning for, that the company already took great pride in participating in, that I started sliding things in. As soon as I finished with the conference in Colorado, I came back and I was like, let me just do, we were coming off the COVID era, right? We were going back where we were traveling. There were still masks mandates and things like that here and there. But in Texas, considering the size company we have we took great pride in making sure that we could connect everyone via Zoom. So I went ahead and did an entire conversation about VitalCog on why it was so important for us to talk about mental health awareness in the industry. And the great thing that VitalCog did was bring statistics and facts. It really encompassed everything. And so firstly, having those Zoom conversations and setting it out there where you could do a lunch and learn, it could be a lunch and learn. And also for us now, El Paso is in a different time zone than the rest of the areas that we have it, like Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, and Austin, right? So
Texas is big.
Texas is big. We are a huge republic, right?
We're gonna keep throwing Texas goofs in there the whole time.
I'll just tell you, it's a great state. It's a great state. Everyone has their crazies, but we really love ours.
So you got two time zones in Texas, right?
Yeah, we do. We have Central Time Zone, and then we have the Mountain Time Zone. Incredible. I think that's what it's called. Yeah. You're right. So hour behind Central Time.
So what did you do with that then?
So, well, basically, I for the first time, I held a Zoom conversation, one in the morning, for Central Time. That was, my time zone, and then one after lunch for the El Paso team members, or just for everybody. Actually, we advertised them for both. Everyone was allowed to attend regardless. And think about it. We're in the construction industry.
Yeah.
Project job sites are always running. So to ask people to stop building, which is to stop producing, is a huge ask. Yes. I mean, we are here to support our craft workers. We are here to support everybody that keeps us in business, if you think about it. So that was the thing. Flexibility. Then also using our arsenal of already what we already had. We at the time have, and we still do, have HCSS. HCSS is our construction system data center where we do all our audits, and it's real time and all of that. And then we also had MindForge, which is our pseudo learning management system, where we were able to produce videos and send them out. And we also had safety bites. The idea was of 1 to 2 minutes of microburst informational safety bites and it was all about safety. So by the time I started working within the mental health concepts and started working on that, that was something that was very, very easy, for me to do. It was easy for me to do in the sense that I already knew what we could do with our safety bites, where we would film all these things and release them on LinkedIn, release them on YouTube, release them via MindForge. And then also with ATSS, there was an ability to create meetings around it so people could actually watch the video and acknowledge. And we would use toolbox talks. I've created toolbox talks. And so for Jordan Foster, using a lot of community resources is how, because the one thing for me was, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we also want to evolutionize the wheel. And that's what we did. So at Jordan Foster, we used traditional methods of creating the toolbox talks. We used our standard methods of our video learning. And then, sometimes in this movement, it's very important to realize that there are certain things that may happen in your life that all of a sudden open up a gateway. And for me, what I do want to strongly emphasize is that when I met you 4 years ago, and when I joined this movement, it was because I was an empathetic person that had an incredible family system and had an incredible group of people that were involved in empathy. And that's something I really want to emphasize. I had not known anyone who had any kind of catastrophic event. I did not know anyone who was suffering with substance abuse or a mental illness.
Yep.
I was just what I call an ally, and I was an ally with empathy, because empathy is extremely important, and not sympathy, but empathy. So there's a huge difference, right?
Yep.
And I wanted to create transparency. That was just really important.
That point, real quick, I want to punch that. That's really important. You do not have to have you don't have to have lived experience or know people who have either died by suicide or died by overdose or anything.
Yes.
You don't have to have that story in order to be an ally. I remember when I first joined the movement, I was just like, I don't know anybody who's actually died by suicide. I know
exactly
maybe like I don't know, 3 or 4 people removed, like people who are not in really in any of my direct circles. And I felt almost insecure about that at first. I almost felt a little like,
yeah,
I don't know what I bring to the table without a story around this. And then I started thinking about it in terms of like, okay, well, maybe I don't have that, but I do have a mental health journey,
exactly.
My mental health journey, it, but if the folks listening don't know, but 2-time cancer survivor, burnout pastor, bottomed out in my mental health, developed a drinking problem, and then dove back into therapy, got some help, and got back up on my feet. So I realized, you know what? It's just because I don't have, I have maybe a different type of story around this that has led me into allyship or advocacy or helping or whatever it is you want to call it.
Exactly.
But to me, that's a really important point that I think people need to hear, that it's okay. Whatever your story is, it doesn't matter. As long as you have that kernel of care for people around you, then you've got a place at this giant table of advocacy and helping. I think so many people need to hear that.
Exactly. And I cannot emphasize that enough. And that's why I really want to, that's actually at the core of what I hope a lot of people hear, because empathy is really all it takes. Empathy and having that desire of understanding and just having the desire to help people. I mean, that is at the core of what we're trying to do. Help people to help themselves, because everybody falls down at some point. There isn't any single one of us that hasn't gone through something in our lives that hasn't knocked the wind out of us. And if it wasn't for someone to stop and reach out their hand and help pick us up, I mean, that's really what that is really what it's all about. We are responsible for the community we live in. I know we'd like to think that we live in this singular world where we don't need help, but we do. No matter who you are, no matter what country you live in, no matter what side of the world you've grown up on, there's always some service, something that you need, and it involves people taking care of people. Mm-hmm. So why not talk about it in a fashion where we can create those bite-sized pieces where people can be willing to take a bite and see if they want some more, And so my father and my mother, who are extremely important in my life, obviously, finally moved to Texas in June of 2022. Mm-hmm. And in August of 2022, my father passed away. Mm-hmm. And my family had to render aid until the emergency support personnel got there. Yeah. That event changed changed my entire family, obviously. Yeah. My father was the captain of our ship. He was the person who was a very devout Muslim who believed in empathetic care and community responsibility through religious means. Yeah. And he was a very devout Muslim, very strong connection to God. And with his passing, I'll tell you, it was extremely catastrophic to me, to my mother especially, and to my sister. Yeah. And I mean, even though my sister and myself, we have incredible spouses. Our husbands are incredible. Our kids are great kids. Mm-hmm. Watching our mother in that situation, watching our father pass away, was extremely difficult. And this is the other thing I want to emphasize, which is maybe slowly being talked about. So my father passed away at 11:30 on a Thursday night, and as Muslims we bury our dead very quickly. So he was buried by, I want to say 4 or 5 p.m. the next day, which was a Friday. And I went to work on a Monday. And anybody
Wow.
anybody in their right mind would not go to work on a Monday. Now, the reason I want to emphasize this is because at that point, I was 2 years into my journey on mental health awareness, on the concept, the culture of care concept. It was, I was already talking to people, helping people. I mean, there were things and situations that were happening within Jordan Foster that we realized, hey, we need to have these conversations. We need to double check on people. And I'm rendering aid, mental health first aid to people. And I'm going to work on a Monday, 3 days after my father passed away. And I'll tell you, it was in the time I told myself, everything is so chaotic in my life. I need that balance and structure. And I will tell you, I don't know if I would have behaved any differently, but what I would have done is maybe started grief counseling too right away. I was someone who knew people in this industry. I knew people, I rubbed shoulders. I mean, you and I rubbed shoulders with people who were the architects of mental health awareness in this industry and how to render aid. And I didn't know how to help myself.
Wow.
I'm telling people, I'm always here for you. If you have any stress or pressure, reach out to me. But because I was the support system for so many people, for my mother, for my sister, I had to hold it together. Even in my social circles, I wasn't a person who considered myself someone who needed to reach out for help, because I always put myself, even in my social circles, as someone who would be reached out to. So it wasn't that I was trying not to reach out for help. I didn't know how, because I know, and I know it can sound extremely shocking, right? But here you are telling people how to get help, but I couldn't even identify that I needed the help myself. Because I have all the knowledge, Paul. I had you. How many times did we talk? I think I even saw you like a month after all of that happened, right? I think I saw you afterwards. Yeah. And that's when I shared with you what had happened. And I knew that was, you were shocked, when I met your family. Everyone was like, what are you doing here? And I said, I want you to know I'm okay. Because at the time, I really felt I was okay. But then there were tremendous cracks. There were tremendous outbursts. There was burnout. There was rage. There was emotional crying. I developed this issue. I still remember I was planning a meeting, a team meeting in Austin for all my team members, and I knew I had to stand up in front of them and have a conversation. And I remember I was telling one of my coworkers when I was showing him the presentation of what we were going to go over. I had an emotional breakdown. Wow. Because not breakdown. I stopped talking and I started crying. Yeah. And I felt so uncomfortable and I felt so bad. I put him in that position. But that's when I was the first time I realized I'm nervous standing up and having everyone look at me. Things that I never had problems with before. All of a sudden, I developed all these issues of, I don't think I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. Sure. But I still didn't know that I needed help. Yeah. If it wasn't for the team members that I had trained on mental health first aid in the years passing, if it wasn't for making sure our entire safety department was trained on mental health first aid as being people to help identify and have the conversation, I'll tell you, if it wasn't for them, I don't know if I would be okay today. And when I say okay, I don't mean that I'm great and everything is perfect. Yeah. Because grief is one of those things, it's never going to go away, but you learn to live with it and you learn to accept the change in your soul of now who you are.
It becomes a part of your journey.
Exactly. And as a result,
go away. Yeah.
And as a result, Paul, it did. After I realized the impact of what happened to me, one of the things that was extremely impactful was when my father was passing away, my family had to render CPR. And it was about a year later that I ended up having to go and become a CPR instructor because I wanted to support my department, who is always on the run and always working very deeply. In case we needed trainings, why shouldn't I give that training? It's something everyone should train on and learn. And I will tell you that it was at that time that I realized the psychological impact of what somebody could possibly go through because we had gone through it. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I started thinking about, well, why isn't there? I started researching, what does someone go through? And then I realized there's an incredible component out there that people don't realize, that there is a psychological impact that does happen to people. I mean, 70% of CPR events happen in the home. And then there's this concept of bystander care, mm-hmm. bystander CPR.
Sure.
And even in those circumstances, even with professionals, even with people who are in the industry of giving physical CPR to people to save their lives, they even go through a psychological impact depending on what they've gone through. And as a result, because in construction, we are supposed to train as many people as possible when it comes to CPR, especially on our job sites. Mm-hmm. We do CPR classes, and we do them every 2 years. And so now the one concept that I worked on that has gained a lot of attention is what we call the Mind Saver program. Mm-hmm. The Mind Saver program here at Jordan Foster is basically that after every CPR class, you take, 15 to 20 to 30 minutes and have a conversation about the importance of creating a psychologically safe job site. I mean, we talk about creating a physically safe job site, right? PPE, all those things. Sure. We talk about the JHAs, we talk about the hazards, we talk about all these things. But why don't we talk about the psychological impact of what someone could go through after giving CPR? And this wasn't only a call for people on what they should identify in themselves. It was actually primarily based to the people that observe people who may have given CPR to someone. I mean, when you think about the construction industry, Paul, we have people who work 10 to 12 to 16 hours a day with their crew. And we all know that a crew, every single person has a job responsibility. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, if that person goes down, sometimes you spend more time with them than you do your own family. So if you watch that person go down and you have to render aid, and in Texas, and I'm confident this is all over the country too, but in Texas, we have a lot of generations of construction. So which means that sometimes it's fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, cousins. We have fathers, sons, and grandsons. If these are people who are working within the same crew, mm-hmm. And there's a symbiotic, concern and relationship, and then you're having to go and render aid, successful or not, it is a psychological, and maybe that's not the best word to use, but in rendering aid, there is a psychological impact, regardless of whether the person is able to get up and walk away afterwards, or there's an extended stay in the hospital, or like in my father's case, he was not, he had passed away immediately, but aid was still rendered until the license or until the professionals got there.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I mean, it's, to me, this is all like you grew up in this culture of helping and caring for people, which came from, which is in and of itself a legacy of your father.
It is.
He set that standard of culture for your family, and that's, and you are carrying that legacy forward. And then in this really tragic situation with your dad and what you went through with having to perform CPR and all of that, that in your journey in processing self-care, and that like you've spent all these years taking care of people, and then in this time and in this chapter, you're the one who needed to be taken care of. And I've sat through Mind Saver. I've heard it, and it's fantastic. And to me, it's one of those things that when we bring our story and bring what has impacted in our lives into the equation, we're able to reach people where they're at even better, because we're bringing in those scenarios and those situations that, who else? You were the person, who was going to go and carve out that niche that needed to be carved out and taken care of.
Yeah.
And so, and so if it wasn't for you doing that, I mean, who was going to put that together? I don't know, maybe somebody, but you're the one who did it. And so I think, to me, to go back to the original question forever ago now was, what has Jordan Foster done? What have you done to create this program that was absolutely award worthy? And what you've done is you've shown me this is a place that's this is a program that's very personal to you. That's stemming from your story, both your background with your family and what you went through with your dad. And then also in the roots of what Trisha set up for you guys a long time ago by sitting at the table with these folks to get to that made it a duh. Why would we not do this? Of course we're going to have a program. Like, now it's to go and make it the best version of itself that it can be, and that's exactly what you guys have done. So I think that's incredible. And you already answered the next question that I was going to throw in there was, how has the movement shaped you as a helper? And to me, it's so core to who you are. It's so, and what would you say too? Okay. So in your self-care journey, this is something I want to also keep, I want to keep getting at, is as a helper and as an advocate, now that you need care too.
Yes.
What does that look like?
Okay.
What have you figured out is what does care look like for us, Mom?
Oh no, you're going to ask me about my self-accountability.
Yeah.
About self-awareness. So believe it or not, for me, learning to feel and let go, and it's okay for me to feel, and it's okay for me to say, I can't show up it's okay for me to say I can't show up for everyone else right now because I have to show up for myself first. Learning how to put myself first and learning that it's okay to ask for help. And for that has been very private for me because of the nature of who I am, but making sure that I'm consistent with getting the help that I need professionally, number one. I think it's extremely important, regardless of whether you have ever had a catastrophic event or a life-changing event. I'll be honest with you, I think especially in the world we live in and how connected we are to all world events, because the knowledge is at our fingertips and what we see is very, very jarring. Mm-hmm. I think having therapy is not a bad thing because it allows you not to get wrapped up into other people's expectations of who you are. And then for someone like me that was breaking, and I never want to say breaking cultural curses, because my culture is something I take great pride in, but at the same time, deviating a little bit. So for me, learning to physically take care of myself, working out, I think is extremely important. Whether it's taking a mile walk, I go hiking every Saturday. Nice. I go hiking every Saturday. And that's at the place that I'm at, is learning how to walk away and set up boundaries for anything that is not healthy for you.
Good. Hey, that's incredible. And to validate you and encourage you, the start of that journey is a journey that a lot of people don't even get to. How many folks they drive their way through life and they never figure out the stuff that actually helps fill them up. So they're just constantly pouring themselves out over and over and over and over again, ironically on empty.
Exactly.
I know. So many people, they just end up on their deathbed someday looking back and being just like, wait a minute,
what did I do?
What did I do? Versus no, when you have a mission for your life and you find that mission and you're like, I want to give all of myself to this thing. And part of giving all of myself to this thing is making sure that I have plenty of myself to give.
Exactly.
And you are on the journey of doing that. And guess what? I don't think anybody ever actually masters it. So it is.
Okay, good. At least
you're good. Yes. And
exactly.
I'm in the same boat too. So I'm working on that too. But I always want there to be a focus on when we're talking about the helpers out there, because honestly, there need to be more helpers in the world. There need to be more people
Absolutely.
who are doing the kind of work that you and I are doing, and that are, yes, you've got this black and white role at your job or whatever,
Yes.
but like in the world and what you represent goodness, and you represent help, and you represent a positivity that we are so desperately dehydrated, and our world needs that,
Exactly.
And so I just want to encourage that, and I think hearing your story, it's representative of that 100%. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing Jordan Foster's story and your story. Thank you for your openness. All right, and thank you all for listening to the second episode of Paul Lawson Chats, and we'll catch you on the next episode. See ya.